let's have a look at what's been going on in the Christian world. Richard Coles. If you remember Richard Coles, he was the most famous Anglican priest in the country for a long time, until he retired last year. And he was formerly a member of a rock band. He used to go on Have I Got News for You quite a lot. Very liberal, lefty liberal, always happy to say the right things, the politically correct things. Anyway, he's come out and exposed himself and exposed the Church of England, saying that gay clergymen like himself are breaking the rules with their live-in partners and outright lying about it. Now, for those who aren't aware, homosexuality is a sin in Christianity, and all sex outside of marriage is a sin in Christianity. It's called fornication if it's between a man and a woman. It's called sodomy if it's between two men, and it's all classed as a sin. However, the only situation where sex is not a sin is or the marital act, as we should call it, is when it's between one man and one woman who happen to be married. And that's because they're open to being blessed with children. That's the whole purpose of the conjugal act. Now, the Church of England has made it very clear that they're quite liberal on the issue of the laity, almost saying that people can get on with whatever they want to get on with as long as it's on their own conscience. But with the clergy, there are exceptions. The clergy should not be in an active homosexual relationship because it is against Christian teaching. So now the way around it is lots of these gay clergymen are living with tenants or their friends or their live-in partners and saying, oh, no, we're celibate. Honestly, we're celibate. And of course, it's all a lie. We all know it's a lie. It's the don't ask, don't tell rubbish. But they're allowed to get away with it. But I don't know how long that can go on now that Richard Coles has actually outed himself and said he lied to the church about his sex life the whole time. He was in an active homosexual relationship with a man he was living with. He was essentially in a gay marriage, which is against the law, quite literally against canon law. And so when we see people like this, Charlie Bell, a very famous LGBTQ plus activist, also calls himself a priest, living with his live-in partner. These people are brazen about it because they do not care about showing off their sin. It undermines the very role of the priest. And so I'm hoping that something will come of this. And that what Richard Coles has done has exposed the hypocrisy that's going on in the Church of England. Priests should not have live-in partners. Within the Church of England, a priest can be married, but that means married to a woman. If anything else is going on, there needs to be serious investigation by the bishops. Now, I mentioned that we have a Christian preacher who has been persecuted by the inept police. And this has been an ongoing issue for quite a while. And we've got our resident expert, Lois McClatchy Miller, on to talk to us about it. Lois, thank you for coming back on. You are our most frequent visitor so far.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Not at all. Now, I saw you tweet about this and I didn't connect that this was the same chap that we've talked about previously. So this story broke in that there was a Christian preacher who was told by the police. Well, first of all, let's back up. He asked the police for protection because he was receiving abuse, racist abuse, religious abuse, every time he went out street preached. So he asked the police for protection, and they came to him and didn't protect him. They gave him an order that said, you cannot criticize other religions other than Christianity. And they banned him from delivering a sermon, I quote, from delivering a sermon or religious address at a time or place that has not had prior consent and approval of Avon and Somerset Constabulary.
That's right.
How is this a thing?
I know. Just let that sink in. The police asked to have prior review of what this pastor would be able to teach. Presumably, from the Christian message from the Bible. Now, to back up a little bit, we have freedom of religion and belief in this country, and that includes freedom to express your beliefs and also the freedom to criticize, discuss, and challenge other beliefs. And that's been baked into our country, hard-fought rights for good reason for a long time. But somehow, in this case, we see a kind of double standard has crept in when it comes to upholding free speech. When it comes to policing that today. And the police did overstep. They have admitted now, thanks to a challenge from the Free Speech Union and ADF UK, that they did act disproportionately in asking warning him not to preach without prior consent, not to criticize other religions, and not to even challenge other worldviews like atheism. I mean, what's the point of Christianity if not to to shine a light into these areas of discussion.
Lois, I take issue with the word disproportionate because that suggests that they were right to do it, but they went too far. Surely the word should be inappropriate. It's inappropriate for the police to tell any Christian preacher what they should be preaching on.
Yeah, now we can understand that the police often come to situations where they have a public order issue and there is a dispute over who said what and what's happened and why there is kind of a commotion on the street. But time and time again, we've seen that instead of balancing up the weight of free speech, the weight of freedom of religion against public order concerns that they have to manage, so often they just overrule those rights and forget and diminish them. And then, apologize later if they overstepped. So what we really need is for the police to be trained better to appreciate these rights, to know the significance of them, and to be erring on the side of free speech when in doubt. And that certainly would help address some of that challenge or the challenges that we see today when it comes to censorship.
But Lois, do we have free speech? Do we have freedom of expression and freedom of religion? Because whenever I see cases like this, they're always reliant on the ECHR. Do we not have them baked in British law too, or English law?
Well, yes and no. We certainly should. We certainly can rely on a great tradition of free speech in this country. But more and more, the government has brought in legislation which does not err on the side of free speech. I mean, we can only look at the last couple of years of this government. We saw legislation brought in to hamper even the rights to think freely in certain public streets. If you're thinking prayerfully, if you're thinking about abortion in a way that the authorities don't like, we saw several cases, including that Isabel von Spruce, where individuals were arrested or charged on the basis of their thoughts or their speech, if it was particularly if it was Christian. And here, of course, again today we see another case where a Christian has been censored for peacefully expressing his beliefs. And I know it's very important to Dia and his church that it's emphasized that they tried really hard to work constructively with the police, that they had initially invited them to accompany them as Dia spoke, because Dia was receiving a lot of racist abuse on the street, and he asked for protection and help to diffuse these situations. The police did not offer that help. Their solution in the end was not to protect Dia, but instead to ask him to stop speaking, which is not the right approach at all. And I really hope that this is a lesson for that constabulary, that this is not the way to handle public order. Freedom of speech is incredibly important.
It does seem to me there's a two-tiered approach to the police, and that if this was a Mohammedan, if this was a person of any other faith, they would have had the support of the police. But because this was a Christian, he was the one that was told to shush. Now you've said there is another instance of this. I'll try and find the video in a moment. So this is the same chap that was preaching on the street and manhandled by passers-by in previous times, isn't it?
That's right, yes. There's been several instances over the course of the past few years where Dia has been abused, attacked on the street, mocked, jeered at by crowds. And that clip that you're, I think, going to play is genuinely very heartbreaking to see that happen on the streets of Britain. This should not be the way that we treat a gentleman who is simply expressing his views. Of course, we have the right to disagree, to challenge, to debate. But this culture of cancel culture really invokes the kind of blasphemy laws of old. You can imagine that scene taking place hundreds of years ago, and somebody shouting blasphemer, and having Dia locked away for expressing his views. Now, we've come a long way since then. We should be allowed to express our religious views or any other views freely in the public square, to have them debated, challenged, and spoken about. But yet again, we find ourselves in this situation where freedom of speech has been destroyed.
Okay, so we've got that footage. Let's take a look at what happened. Thuggish behaviour. To consider this used to be a Christian country. So I appreciate the support that ADF give, and also I believe the Free Speech Union were involved in this case.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't have to get to that level. Who can Christians rely on for support when they're being persecuted in this way? If the police are not on standby, who can they go to?
Yeah, it is tough. It is a very difficult situation, and increasingly so in the UK right now. We see only an increase in reporting of such cases. But what we do know is that by law, in human rights law, no less, that these people do have a right to be speaking. And it's so important to be emphasizing that, not shying away from being able to hold those opinions, because if we do that, then the hate speech legislation, the censorship legislation has won. If it chills our right to speak freely about the gospel or any other important societal issue, then it will have already taken effect without any further work from the government. So we must be encouraged to speak freely, and to encourage others to do so as well.
Thank you for watching my Common Sense Crusade. If you'd like to watch the whole show, you can subscribe to lotuseaters.com for as little as £5 per month, and then you get access to a bank of content as well. My show is 3 p.m. every Thursday. See you there. Deus Vult.